The morning after the fire, I decided to get right to planting some plants. I was going to need some food. And then I decided to cut down all the plants around here that would spread the fire. It was also my goal to get rid of all wooden structures, although there was going to have to be some temporary solutions how to store my stuff. I had to butcher those dogs that had passed away. It wasn't ideal, but it was what I had. Harley had made it. I decided to include Harley in my daily life, not leave him on the outside anymore. I built myself a fire, picked a spot to do some butchering, got to making a few meals. I was going to need food with all the work I had going here, and supplies were very low since everything had burnt up on me. So I made a few meals, just doing some normal cooking stuff. Using the dog meat, the figs I had around. I was still pretty stressed. I had to spend some time just chilling out, enjoying myself before getting to the serious business around here. I decided I was going to do some hauling to get all the junk out of the way and some cleaning because the place was just a disgusting mess. I was going to run out of places to put slag before too long, but it was what it was. I got to the business, hauling stuff around, getting things orderly. That was going to be a part of my big cleaning effort here. And then I set to it with the broom and the dustpan. Went all around, cleaning up the filth, dust, debris, dirt, trash, you name it. All the burned out structure. Decided I was going to have to build some walls that would be temporary around my storage stuff. I didn't want anything deteriorating on me since I'd collected a whole bunch of nice stuff. So I got those walls made. Decided to do a little more cooking. Didn't want to make too many meals though. They weren't likely to last terribly long without refrigeration around here anymore. After that, I had to hit the hay, despite it only being noon. I got a message about peace talks, that I was still feeling pretty miserable and upset about everything that had gone down. Upon waking, it was about 11 p.m. I got back to the business of cooking. Pemmican seemed like the right choice. It would last longer. I had the materials. There were some hops around, so I decided to make up what wort I could. Since I still had some brewing barrels that had survived and the temperature outside was pretty decent. Took that wort, put it right in the barrel. Got back to cleaning straight away. This place was a horrible mess. Wouldn't take me too long though. After that I decided to build a bed for Harley. If he was going to be here for a while. He'd like a nice little spot to sleep. I also needed myself a chair since mine had burnt up. So I got to working on that. Now that I'm opposed to wood, it was difficult to build something out of wood again, but I did it anyway. Then I took some time to myself again. My nerves are still fried. I was as unhappy as could be. Got back to cleaning shortly after. Eventually I'd get this mess tidied up. Turns out filth was everywhere. Smoke, ash, you name it. Still a bunch of blood laying around. Man, it felt nice to have things tidied up. After that, it was back to bed once again. Those dogs running around like crazy people. While sleeping, another power cable went. Another fire started. This was getting to feel a bit repetitive to me. But it was no big deal since everything wasn't built out of wood this time. Stoked up my fire. Had another meal. Was sitting in my new chair. Spent some time training Harley. And had some success. I'd have to be wary of roof collapses. When I took down a wall, almost got myself crushed. But I lucked out. so I made it my next priority to get a whole bunch of these roofs ripped down before I start working on taking out the supporting walls. Seemed like that'd be a better play, get myself killed. So I focused on roof removal. Got some stuff hauled around. And before long the roofs were down. I got to deconstructing wooden walls I didn't want. I even took down my old torch that was off in my mining zone. I had a fair amount of steel. Hopefully I wouldn't need it, was my last thought as I drifted off to sleep that night. Someone phoned me they were being chased. Wanted some help, but I was in no position to be helping people out right now. I had a lot of work to do. It was going to take days to get back to where I'd been. Turns out Harley was a female, and Hamlet took to her. Those two were having a good time. I decided to set up my table, my chair, and my chess table, even my fancy statue, in my working room, which was not going to be my eating room also. And about that time, decided more food was definitely in order as well. So I ran around outside, harvesting everything in sight. There was apples, cherries, raspberries. While doing so, had a nice lay in the dirt, just staring up at the clouds floating by, trying to ease my mind. I got peaches and a whole ton of ambrosia. Since my last huge batch had burnt right up, this would come in useful. After harvesting it all, it was time to carry it all in, of course. Just a daily routine, getting stuff together. But I was able to nab it all in one go. Found a dead rabbit while I was out there. Decided a little meat wouldn't be a bad thing. After dropping everything off inside, I sat down, had a little bit of chill out time, and then ran off to get that rabbit before something else got a hold of it. It wasn't going to make much for me, but it wouldn't be all bad. Got back to cooking after that, made a meal, butchered up that rabbit, got back to the business of making pemmican. Sure was not a lot of meat around anymore. I decided I'd need a smarter spot to put all my food. It's sitting outside, but I was tired enough to have to hit the hay. Upon waking, it was time for another meal and get all my food put into the storage. At least it wouldn't deteriorate, although it wouldn't last forever, being that it wasn't refrigerated. Spent a bunch of time cooking, working with Hamlet. He always needed some attention, but he's a quick learner now. That was good. After stoking up the fire again, I decided to lay my mostly clean area. I was already getting filthy again. When I was back on my feet, did some more sowing of the crops. My only ready potatoes, I failed in plucking. Harley needed some attention by then, so I worked with her. Then I got to repairing my walls that had been half burnt. Took more effort than I would have liked, but it was what it was. After all the repairs were done, it was time to start ripping up these wooden floors. So that's what I focused on for quite a spell. I would be getting back a fair amount of wood out of this issue. Not that I was too gung-ho to be building anything out of wood. Harley did need a fair amount of training, so I tried to stay focused on that as well. I guess 2 dogs are better than 1. Bedtime again, right after that. Next morning, I made a few joints, just so I'd have a few around, and I had a mountain of smoke leaves sitting. So after making 5 of them bad boys, I had myself a meal. My hops were due, so I plucked all them. Hamlet, the good boy, helped me get them pulled inside. I decided some beer would be nice as well, so I got to the business of making wort right away. I didn't get a terrible lot, but I got enough to throw it in the fermenting barrel before long. I pulled up some floors. I got that wort in the barrel. And then I pulled up more floors. I was about done with the deconstruction phase of this project. I decided I was going to mine out some of this mountain. I was going to need a whole bunch of rock chunks, because I was going to need to make a whole bunch of blocks I could make some proper structures out of that would not burn. After having a meal, I cleaned up the work area. I got back to the business of mining for a while. Just watching them beer barrels, eagerly waiting for that beer to come out of there. I mined for a bit, and then I went to work with Harley. She didn't care too much for peaches. After failing in that, I went to bed. Next morning, back to the usual routine. Got up and had a meal. Worked with Harley some more. Seemed like she was starting to take to the peaches after all. One of my wind turbines had broke down, so I got that repaired before getting back to mining. And just hoping I get chunks every time I do it, which isn't the case. I set up a little torch to work by. Turns out I worked faster in the light and did a bunch of mining before going to bed. While sleeping, a whole herd of angry cows showed up. They were ripe for my blood for whatever reason. So, no rest for the weary, I guess. Jumped myself out of bed, grabbed my AR-15, got to the business of shooting them cows. I got nervous at one point, because there were a lot of them. Only 2 of them made it past the trap system, and I started giving them the business as soon as they came in. This is my homestead. I don't need any angry cows. One of them almost got a hold of me. Fortunately, I'd wounded her real well. I did have to run away, find a better spot to shoot her though. And it didn't take long before she went down. The one bull that had got in required some special attention to put him out of his misery. So I got to that. Sometimes it's nice, your food comes right to you. While doing that, an ibex doe, little goat, had gone mad as well. Don't know what it is with the animals around here. Barely got that bull killed before that doe started attacking me. So, fortunately, my firearm is reliable. I brought it down, was able to finish it off. I decided all them cows and that doe had to be put somewhere so I could get them butchered. It's time for some food after that. I had a little pemmican. Then I smoked a joint, because why wouldn't you, given all the chaos and misery around here. Then I got the cows hauled. Hamlet was happy to help. You should have seen it. This little dog dragging this giant cow around was pretty entertaining. After that, I started butchering cows, doing a little bit of cleaning, and decided I was going to need a better system. I didn't want all this to go to rot, so I planned a little freezer nearby. But I was so tuckered out after the cow battle, I had to go to bed. While sleeping, a fella named Greyhound decided to join me. He was a bit of a downer, and he had some good meals. When I explained the misery of my situation, he decided he'd leave me them meals, and I told him he couldn't stay. Mostly because I was such a crabby individual right now. And despite having been adamant that he leave, I wasn't terribly happy to see him go. But it was what it was. When I woke up, I got to build my new little freezer area. It was going to be a temporary fix, I hoped. But it needed to be done if I was going to keep all this cow meat from going bad and my meals from going bad. So that's what I set up. Made a good plan for it. Even decided I'd store dead animals in there so they wouldn't rot if I didn't get to butchering them sooner rather than later. I did need to run some power over there. A new AC unit was going to require that. There was also traps to rebuild, since those cows had swarmed in with all the fury of Mother Nature. So I worked on building traps. Took some inventory, what kind of vegetables I had around. It wasn't terribly bad because it wouldn't be long before my potatoes came due. After all the traps were built, I got to building them power cables. I think the less of those the better, the way it's been going around here. They are certainly unreliable, just waiting to burn your house down on you. Spent some time once again trying to train Harley up, and she was taking to it pretty well. Pemmican supplies were pretty low, so I worked on that for a minute, and then I decided just to get all these cows butchered before they rotted anymore. I had tons of wood, so I had a meal, smoked a joint, decided I was gonna get all my fruits and vegetables put away into my freezer. After that, I was off to bed. Some cargo pods fell out of the sky once again while I was sleeping. Some kind of drug. Reminded me a bit of cocaine, not that I ever dabbled in that. Things were coming back together. At least the place was tidy once again. When I woke up, I had a meal. It was about 11 p.m. Plucked some smoke leaf that was ready. And I refueled my fire, even though in my brain I was thinking I should move it. Didn't make sense to be walking all this way every time I made a meal, so that's what I did. Moved my fire near to my freezer. Decided I was going to need a whole slew of pemmican. So I got to working on that for a little bit, see if I could use up some of this stuff laying around. And I cooked. Occasionally I took a break, worked with Harley, but most of my time then was spent cooking. If I could get a bunch of food reserves set up, then I'd be right in the right spot to start making stone block. At that point, Timberwolf started hunting Harley, but my trap did the job, so I had to get that trap rebuilt then. And then I had to get that Timberwolf put into the freezer. He'd make some nice fur. Got back to planting the hops and dealing with that. I made all the wort that I could, which is more than a little, since I did have quite a few hops around. I put it in my last fermenting barrel. While eating, the sound of a mad rat came to me, screeching, scratching out, but I decided to ignore it. Once again, the trap would do its job. I think I spend more time rebuilding traps than I do anything else. Once again, while sleeping, a fire started. This time some kind of crazy, exploding rat stepped on one of my traps. And my frustration grew at the fact that I was going to have to rebuild that trap once again. Seems like it never ends around here. Went back to bed once I got the fire put out. While sleeping, Harley himself hit a trap. This was extremely unfortunate. The poor girl was down and did not have long to live. Cut her tail clean off. I had to jump up again, see about rescuing her. Wasn't looking good though. Perhaps I shouldn't have tried to keep two dogs. I got her laid in her bed. Got to the business of tending her. She was barely hanging on, and then she died. That's the third dog I've lost in the last couple weeks. That does make a man unhappy. I decided to ease my pain by throwing some horseshoes at that point. I took Harley's bed out of there. I didn't want to look at that all the time. The poor Hamlet would probably be the one most disappointed. I was thinking I was rebuilding the trap. There were so many traps around here that needed rebuilding. But I got it all done. Decided to smoke a joint. And then I was off to bed after cleaning up all the blood that Harley had left me. I was going to have to butcher her for food, was the sad part. But it was what it was. When I woke up, pemmican was on the menu. I got to repairing the wall that exploding rat messed up. And then my potatoes are ready for harvest. I was feeling pretty good about that. I got quite a few out of it. Turns out when you're not stoned, you can pluck plants a little better. I got the ones that would fit, hauled into the freezer, stoked up the fire again, and then got back to making pemmican. After the first batch, I was hungry, so I started eating some of it. And then I cooked more, and then my smoke leaf was ready. I was going to have so much smoke leaf I wouldn't have time to deal with it all, sadly. I'd have to make some kind of priority here. I had so much food laying around. Nope, freezer space for it. Hamlet came down with the plague again about that time. What's with the animals getting sick on this planet? I don't know. So I cut off my cooking. Decided to use some legitimate medicine on Hamlet. He was my best friend, and I certainly didn't want him to die. I was worried when I lay down to sleep that night. When I got up, some of my beer was ready. So I pulled it out of the fermenting barrel. I was pretty stoked on that. I didn't even sit down to drink one. I drank it standing up. I put away all my crops that had been laying around. Again, my freezer was full, so not a lot of them fit in there. But that's alright. After that, I had a joint. Didn't plan on doing much that involved any real focus today. Found some medicine, so I could use that on Harley, just growing nearby. And then I went back to cooking. While cooking, chunks of spacecraft fell out of the sky once again. For now, I was going to let it lay. I had too much on my hands. Also, while cooking, a mad tortoise decided to make a dash at the base. I was so frustrated with having to rebuild these traps all the time, I decided I was going to meet that tortoise on the outside. Since it had taken about 45 minutes to get here, given the speed of a tortoise, I had plenty of time. I started shooting at him. Turns out he wasn't the easiest thing to hit. But once I hit him a few times, he was significantly slowed. Caught him right in the shell, right in the plastron. Good thing I know some herpetological terms. My third shot brought him down. And I decided I'd probably try and butcher him. At the minute, I didn't have any empty freezer space because of all the other dead animals laying around. Got back to cooking right after that, and then I was off to bed, listening to the muffalo moan and walk around. While sleeping, yet another power cable went. This is a very repetitive situation, and it's frustrating. Maybe my electrical skills will improve at some point, and that won't happen so much. Once I put the fire out, I cooked a little bit. Crazy buzzing started in my ear for the umpteenth time as well. So I cooked, put the food away, and then I went back to bed. When I woke up, it was more pemmican, and then it was back to cooking. I was planning out what to do about my new home all the while. See if I can make something nicer, more efficient than what I had before, which was cobbled together in desperate times. While cooking, transport pod came down. It was one of them dirty pirates. I decided I was going to let that pirate lay there. I tried my best to make the world a better place in my own little way, and it just wasn't panning out. So I cooked for a spell, then I decided to do some cloud watching. Hamlet came over and nuzzled me while I was doing so. That cheered me up a bit. Good old Hamlet. Pemmican stocks were getting pretty high. I kept right on cooking, decided maybe I didn't need to make so many. So I finished a little bit more, and then I went to bed. I should be all set on food for a bit, and focus on something else. When I woke, more of my beer was ready, and some pemmican needed eating because my belly was rumbling. I made a joint and smoked it right away, and then I got back to making more joints. I have to see if I can get some of these materials used up that are laying around. After that, I mined for a bit. The more of these blocks I can have laying around, the better. Hamlet was hauling them to the junk pile for me, which was good. They weren't the most sightly thing. So I spent more time mining, moved my torch over. It helped me out a bit. And it did the trick. I was feeling pretty good. Just getting some work done. And a bunch of tribe people decided they were going to attack me. There were 5 of them that I could see. I wasn't going to wait for my traps to do the job this time. I feel like I can handle 5 tribes people. And I decided I was going to set out and do just that. These jerks want to come over here starting trouble. Well, I've had enough. So I picked a nice spot. Started plucking away at him. Got one fella real good right away. And then they all started coming at me. Just shooting at me and stuff. I decided I better back up. Backed up a bit. Shot a bit. Backed up a bit. They decided to lay off for a minute. So I brought the fight right back to them. Walking past some old dead rotten sucker I'd killed a long time ago. I brought one of them down from a good distance. I kept giving them the rest. Brought a second one down. And then they decided they were finally going to come at me for good this time. I had one of them injured pretty well. With all the stuff in the way, I was having a hard time hitting them. But I kept shooting. Anytime they'd get a good beat on me, I'd just run away a bit. 2 of them were wounded at this point. All this just to spare a few traps and a bit of steel. One of them came around the corner. I gave him the business and he turned right around. I kept shooting. They were coming at me in waves seemingly. I decided to retreat back near my wall, see if I could lure them in. Also, if I did that, I'd have a better chance of killing them all. Bunch of jerks. I was yelling, shooting. Brought another one down. The remaining 2 decided they'd better get out of there. But it turns out I'd already shot them up a bit, so they weren't moving very fast. I gave chase, trying to get as close as I could. Shot another one dead. And it didn't take long for the last fella trying to run away went down. I jumped on him right away in my rage. Not sure what came over me. Somehow it felt good to be smashing him good with that gun. Most of their weapons were junk. And that guy's cries will live with me for a while. A few of their bows were worthwhile, so I brought them in. Maybe I could make some cash off that sometime, though I was sitting on a fair amount of silver by now. I dropped off all their stuff, decided I was off to bed. It had been a couple hectic days, and I'd had enough for now.